everyone, and welcome to the Azure Well monthly podcast. My name is HR Payne, and it's just a pleasure to join you all today. We have a wonderful topic for you, and I think a very important topic that sometimes gets overlooked when we're thinking about the whole body and in all of these various situations that we're constantly dealing with. We oftentimes forget. Sometimes it just all begins with digestion. The health of the body really is inseparable from the health of the colon. Yet we are live in a world where we really just kind of focus what we put in it. We often overlook what kind of the body needs to release, right? And when waste isn't eliminated properly within about 24 hours, there's this autoimmune toxication that can actually begin, allowing toxins to be reabsorbed and quietly disrupting the body's terrain. And so it's so important that we focus on the body's digestion. And with age and stress and processed foods, the standard American diet, also known as SAD, right? Environmental exposures, it really can just compound this burden. So when we begin to focus on restoring digestion and supporting proper elimination, we can begin to reestablish one of the body's most foundational pathways to healing. Some say death begins in the colon, right? The colon is the umbilical to all the other systems in the body. And Azure Well, we like to say life begins in the colon. And so with me today, as many of you know, I have Dr. Alphonzo Monzo, biblical naturopath and author of the Alatough Body. He's here to guide us back to these simple but yet powerful principles that help the body release, reset, and thrive. And so he's going to go into some of these foundational elements that are so critical to digestion that we oftentimes overlook when we have some of these stressors and extracurricular burdens that are going on within our body. Dr. Monzo, great to see you. Welcome again. It's always a wonderful power hour that we have with you every month, and it's a privilege to have you yet again for this month talking about digestion.
Yeah.
Digestion. And I like to say, boy, if everybody would just focus on the 90 essential vitamins and minerals and omega fats and amino acids and along with digestion, man, we can be well on our way to getting the body back into balance. Sometimes we get over focused in targeting these different ailments with trying to get fancy with nutrition and whatnot, when it comes back to the basics. And digestion certainly is one of those basics, right?
Yes. Well, thanks for having me again. Yeah. So today's optimal digestion.
Optimal digestion.
And we have our a newer format. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about key, I think we call them the 7 elements to support digestion. And so we're going to hit each one of these main 7 elements. And after each element, we're going to talk about Azure Well products that can help for that specific topic or subtopic, or however you want to say that. So let's see, let's bring up the slides here. And there you go. Gut microbiome. We're going to talk about that. So what are these 7 things? And this kind of relates to the newsletter. Now, we know not always do our podcasts line up with the newsletter, but sometimes it does. We try to do that, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. But this way, it actually kind of worked out very similar. So you can see the 7 elements to support digestive health: water intake, minerals, omega fatty acids and fat-soluble vitamins, probiotics. This next one is kind of bulk, fiber, and cleanse. It's this idea of making sure things are moving. And a lot of times that's what you need. You need the bulk, you need the fiber. They kind of push things through and help form the bowel movement better. And then enzymes and herbs. So that's going to be our 7 elements today. So let's look at the first one, water. And of course, there are going to be things to help with this, with the Azure Well line. But as you can tell, we don't just sell water. We don't have a water supplement necessarily. So
it's free almost, right?
At least what you can get for free. I don't know if that's worth drinking.
It's just so true. I said that, and as soon as I said that, I almost wanted to retract my statement because we go down this little, let's just call it not rabbit hole, but water hole.
Yeah. So interesting facts about this. Your colon acts as a human reservoir, making your stool 70 to 75% water, but also reclaiming a little over a liter of water per day. So I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but the large intestine specifically doesn't really do a whole lot with absorption of nutrients. There's a few. Most of your absorption of nutrients is in the small intestine. And then in the large intestine, that's where the body is absorbing a lot of the water and then eliminating the waste. So dehydration, or when you're dehydrated, your stool becomes hard and dry and difficult to pass, obviously, because by the time you get to the large intestine, now the body wants to pull out all the rest of that water that make that final fecal matter to come out. And if you're dehydrated already, you're going to have a really hard time. That water really helps the colon move things along. And so one of the big problems or solutions for a lot of people when they're constipated is drink more water. And oftentimes, if you're hungry, one of the first solutions is drink more water, because oftentimes the first symptom of dehydration is hunger. And here's a few key facts. So the water helps break down food. It helps move the particles and break down food. I don't know if you've ever, well, everyone's probably done this, given your car a bath or wash something in water. You had something that you needed to clean up, and maybe you had something that was really solid, solidified, and you mix in water, and what happens? All of a sudden, everything starts breaking down. The particles all kind of start falling apart. So this is a naturally occurring phenomena in nature. I think back to when we were little kids, and you're building a sandcastle. It's kind of like having a really good stool. If you added too much water, you didn't have any castle. If you didn't have any water, the sand wasn't going to stay together. So it's kind of this idea that, if you mix in more water, you kind of just make it move more smooth and everything kind of just works. But you don't want too much. You don't want none. Stool softening, which we kind of just mentioned. Obviously, if you're drinking more water, it's going to soften the stools, which means it's going to be able to move easier. You're not going to get all clogged up. That's an awful thing to feel. Lubrication, not just in the gut itself as the bowels, but the esophagus and the entire digestive tract. And then enzyme functions. So essential for producing enzymes in the stomach and small intestine. Now, here's 2 rules I put in. So we kind of have the main points with the check marks and then a few main takeaways in the numbers on the bottom. And this one is drinking before or after meals is the goal. We don't want to drink too much during the meal because you don't want to water down your stomach enzymes, and then you can't actually break down your food. So as much as possible, try to not drink too much during the meal. Obviously, sometimes you need to, because sometimes you need that moisture and lubrication in the throat. You don't want to choke on your food either. Choking would be bad. So we're not saying don't ever drink during a meal, but you don't want to be eating a meal and drink down a whole glass of water right as you're eating. That wouldn't be a great idea, because usually that means you need to get more water or more drink. It's really true for all fluids. And then that means you're going to drink multiple glasses of fluid while you're eating your meal, and that's going to water things down as far as your stomach acid and enzymes. The other thing to really think about avoiding is not drinking ice cold water. This kind of is more of a Chinese medicine concept, but it's just the idea that ice cold water has a very powerful effect on stopping the digestive process. I mean, you can just think about it. When you're freezing cold, what happens? You start shivering and everything, and your body goes into automatic pilot, and you start reserving functions that are not needed for the moment to help keep your body temperature right. So when you drink some ice cold beverage or ice cold water, it kind of almost starts slamming on the brakes for the gut, especially the stomach. And now you have another problem, that is your body's not going to be making the enzymes and digesting as well. So I try to make sure I get room temperature water. Obviously, this is the hardest thing to do when you're out and about and at restaurants, because a lot of times, even when I ask for no ice, somehow I get a drink with ice. So you try to do your best to tell them, I don't want any ice and stuff. And sometimes the water is so cold that you might as well have ice in it anyways. But if you can at all avoid that, it is better on your digestive system. So that covers number one. Anything you want to add there, HR?
No, I think that we're good.
All right. Oops, I almost hit the wrong button. I almost exited instead of next slide. All right. Number two, minerals. Well, we've talked about this a lot, about the 90 essential. And of course, minerals make up a large portion of the 90, 60%, or at least 60 out of the 90 are minerals. So 85 to 90% of water absorption in the intestine is dependent on mineral transport mechanisms to help the fluid balance in the stool. So minerals like magnesium, salt, potassium regulate the process to maintain water movement and promote smooth muscle contraction of the colon. And you can see where we're getting that information there. We have the quotes for the medical journals and stuff that we pull this from. So if you're interested, I like the graphic I was able to find here on mineral-rich foods, so you can get a quick glimpse of, look at these minerals and what foods are common sources. So main points here: acid and enzyme production is based on key minerals. You might not think about this, but specifically salt, and you should be getting good salt. You don't necessarily want just your basic table salt, but maybe sea salt, Baja Gold salt. But sodium chloride and calcium help the body make stomach acid. So if you're not getting those two minerals, now you're going to have a problem with stomach acid. But there's all these other minerals that are also required for stomach acid and enzymes. All of them kind of play a little bit of a role. And this is often true in the body, which is why we try to teach this holistic perspective all the time. And why a lot of holistic, well, what is called natural health today, I don't know if they even call it holistic. A lot of natural health today is very isolated, fragmented, high dose supplementation, which is not always the best, because oftentimes all these minerals kind of work together. So if you're doing a high dose zinc, you can be offsetting other minerals. So that's why we try to teach this whole concept of whole food. When you look at the foods on the chart here, you'll notice you're probably eating 2 or 3 of these things in one meal. You look at how many different minerals you're going to get. And the chart's not going to be the best, because each one of those foods is going to have a number of minerals in it. They're just listing the most, the mineral that's the highest in that food. But in nature, you find a lot of these minerals all kind of come together. So we have to keep that in our minds. Gut mobility. Magnesium helps the speed at which food moves through the digestive tract and helps prevent constipation and bloating. And a lot of times, almost everybody has some type of magnesium deficiency unless you're doing something about it. It's just, we just burn right through it because of stress. And so a good way of knowing if you're getting enough is bowel tolerance, which means if you keep upping your magnesium and to the point that your bowels get loose, then you're at a good limit, and you back off just a little bit. That's when you're getting enough magnesium eventually. But there are certain types of magnesium that aren't great for actually absorbing the magnesium that you can actually use to clean out the gut, like magnesium oxide or stuff. That's not something you would want to take normally, but if you were in a real bind and you didn't want to go take a pharmaceutical, you could get, or I like what is it? Mag 07. It's oxygenated magnesium. And that is not for absorbing magnesium. That goes in there and cleans out the gut, kind of like OxyClean, and you're going to have a bowel movement pretty soon after you taking it. If you took it at night, the next morning, you're probably going to be emptying out. And that's the whole purpose of it, is just to clean you out instead of having to run and grab some laxative that might have ingredients in it that you don't want. Now, even if you take a good form of magnesium, like magnesium glycinate, like we have, that Azure Well has a brand that's called, or a supplement called MagG. Even if you took that high enough doses, you would eventually start cleaning yourself out. Your bowel movements would get a little bit loose, and then that's when you know. So you just have to remember that one of the key principles of magnesium is it relaxes the body. So whether it's the bowel or the muscles, or when you're looking at cardiovascular system with high blood pressure, a lot of times the problem is magnesium, because magnesium helps relax things. And when things are really tight and you need to be relaxed, magnesium is a great mineral to go to. Fluid balance. So now we're talking magnesium, calcium, that's potassium, sodium. We're talking mainly here about hydration and electrolytes. Okay, so when we talk about hydration, we often think drink more water, which is true, but your body needs electrolytes, which are minerals, to help with the hydration, to actually get the water into the cells and into the tissues. So it's not about just adding water back in, but sometimes adding water with the minerals. So now we kind of get into both of those last two topics, or the last two elements, water and minerals. Why? If you look at the one in the middle there from Azure Well, you have the trace replace ionic minerals. Those are minerals you add to your water, your drinking water. So if you had a big, glass like I do, you would add so much of that. That is not to drink straight. That would be really hard to get down. This is really concentrated minerals. You just add a little bit to your water. The directions are on the bottle, and that gets minerals back into your drinking water, so you can get electrolytes, and that's going to help hydration. And of course, it's going to help everything we just talked about. But how else can you get minerals from Azure Well? Well, the whole food multi, it has a lot of vitamins in there, but it does have some minerals. So you are going to get some minerals from that one. MagG, that is magnesium. So that's one way to just get magnesium. A good way to get all of your minerals is the fulvic humic earth, energy earth minerals. Right there in the middle of that little container. It's very potent. You only need a little bit of it, but that has over 70 some mineral. It has minerals, trace minerals in it. Comes straight from plants. So that is a plant-based mineral. It's a great way of getting it. Two other things we put on here was the IP6. IP6, you're going to get calcium, you're going to get magnesium, you're going to get phosphorus. So that's a powerhouse. And then the super greens, Pro pH, which helps with pH in the body. But I think everyone can, if you review back to that one chart, a lot of your greens are full of minerals. So that is another way to get minerals from food directly, and not just a bunch of isolated synthetic stuff. Or when we're talking about minerals, what you want to watch out for is inorganic minerals, which are basically mineral. Sometimes they call them mineral rocks, or sometimes even metals. When they're broken down by the plant, you get the organically bound minerals the way nature intended. But you don't want to just be sucking on a rock and getting a bunch of inorganic minerals that your body can't utilize. So there's that.
Wonderful, wonderful. One of the things I like to just add here is, I mean, this is a beautiful lineup of just those 90 essential nutrients, right? That the body truly needs foundationally, whether and you're going to get this through key players like the super greens, pro pH, and the whole food multi. It's going to give you pretty much everything that's essential to life. And as Dr. Monzo mentioned, we have the trace replace ionic minerals here as well. And I'll tell you, I just have to say it again, man, this is a concentrate. Don't just put it directly into the mouth. It tastes like a junkyard dog, I tell you. It is. It'll send you to your knees asking for mercy. You want to put this into water, but what's so important, oftentimes the mistake is people like to down things all at one time, and I get it. I'm a realist, and sometimes we just got to get down the hatch. But this is one in particular you don't want to do that with. The trace replace minerals is a mineral complex of 70 plus trace minerals. And it even has that magnesium that we're looking for in the magnesium chloride form. So it's a beautifully covalently structured form of magnesium and trace minerals. And we want to put this directly into your water, but make sure that it's the water that you're going to be drinking throughout the day. You want to create like an IV drip for yourself, right? The adrenals don't like it all at one time. The adrenals like taking these minerals throughout the day. So take your dosage, put it into a big thing of water like I got here. I don't know if you can see that, a huge thing of water, and sip on that throughout the day. That's the way that you're looking to incorporate this and support the body. Just wanted to add that important element there, but this is just a beautiful foundation just to get the gut going, making sure everything is in place. So, I mean, a lot of people don't realize, and we'll probably talk about this a lot later, is you need this just to even produce hydrochloric acid in the stomach. A key, it's not an enzyme, but it's a key critical element in supporting digestive health. And we'll be getting into that here in a second. But yeah, these minerals are critical into producing adequate hydrochloric acid in the stomach.
Yes. You need all these minerals to do that. All right, number 3 for optimal digestion was fatty acids. So guess what? Now we're going right back into the 90 essential, because there are 3 fatty acids that are part of the 90 essential. And so the liver is producing 600 milliliters to 1,000 milliliters of bile fluid per day in response to dietary fat intake. So if you don't know, the bile is, well, it probably says it on here, but bile is what helps digest the fats. So we also have an enzyme called lipase, but it's not just lipase, it's also bile. Now the bile is held in the gallbladder. So the liver produces it, it's held in the gallbladder. And then when you're eating foods high in fat, the gallbladder squirts it out, and that gets added in to the digestive tract along with the pancreas enzymes, and that's how it starts the process of breaking things down. This happens after the stomach. Okay. So first the stomach does its job, and then this is the next process, is where we start adding in these enzymes and bile to break down the fats. Now this also helps lubricate the stool in carrying waste out of the body. You can even sometimes look at your stools and sometimes tell by the color that you're not having good bile production. And I think in the newsletter, there is actually a whole handout on different bowel movements and what they look like. So you might want to go look at that on the Azure Well. See, that's Azure Living Well website, and go to the newsletter, and you can find a lot of that information. So fatty acids support the reduction of inflammation and supports healthy digestive system. That's one of the big things everyone knows about fatty acids is the reduction in inflammation. And who doesn't need that? Where do you need it? Everywhere. You definitely want it in the gut. And of course, if you're doing something like the Alaskan cod liver oil from Azure, then you're getting the retinol. Now that's your fat-soluble vitamin A that usually comes from animal source. And it's really interesting that the vitamin A, that's one of the forms of vitamin A that helps protect the gut lining from unhealthy bacteria. It's one of the only forms of vitamin A that does that. That's in medical research. You can look it up. Actually, we probably covered that in one of the really early Azure Well podcasts talking about the Alaskan cod liver oil. And I had the studies. So if you want to go look that up. And then the other product here that Azure has is this rapid liquid gallbladder support. Now, there's a capsule form too called Bio Gallbladder Action Support, and then there's the Gallbladder Support Liquid. They're both pretty much the same. There are little bit differences, but it's designed to help the bile and the gallbladder and that production. So if you're having problems with breaking down fats, you might consider the gallbladder support or the bile gallbladder action support. And to get your fatty acids, do the Alaskan cod liver oil. All right, what is this 4? I think this is number 4. I'm losing track. I didn't put the numbers on here. So optimal digestion, I think probiotics. Oh, where do we start with this? This is a whole topic. It's a really important topic because I think it's often misunderstood. I think it's either been underestimated or over recommended. It's a funny one. 30 to 50% of dry weight in the stool is bacteria. That helps with the stool and its odor and its texture and its frequency. And all of those things are actually indications of how healthy your stool is. So we always ask people, does it float? Does it stink? What color is it? What does it look like? Is there an odor? And people always look at us like, well, isn't there always an odor? Well, no, not actually. If you're really, really, really clean, which almost doesn't happen these days, your stool might not smell at all. The more toxic you are, the more you're going to get an odor. And if it sinks to the bottom and it's dark, then you're probably more toxic. So you want nice, normal stools that are light brown and float and don't smell. That actually is the goal, believe it or not. And so probiotics help. They have a number of benefits. It supports the gut health. It can help against diarrhea. If you're having a lot of diarrhea, that could be you don't have enough healthy gut bacteria. Constipation is the same thing. Believe it or not, these are two sides of the same coin. And you have this balancing system. You have to keep it balanced, which means you need just the right amount. Sometimes if you have the wrong types of bacteria in the gut, you will get diarrhea, right? Now, that's a lot of the food poisoning. Oftentimes bacteria that are not healthy for the bowels get in there. And when you don't have the healthy bacteria to balance it out, then you're running to the restroom a little too often. Supports immunity, and of course, gas and bloating. So when people have gas and bloating, there's always two things I think of. And one is enzymes, which we are about to talk about. Yeah, I think that's number 6. And probiotics. Now, one thing to mention about probiotics is me personally, I don't know, maybe HR has a different approach, but me personally, I don't like starting with probiotics first for gut problems. I try to take some of the more simple steps first, like the waters and the minerals and the fatty acids. And I find people's guts need to be a little bit healthier before you start throwing in probiotics. unless the person's testing really good for it. But we're talking about serious gut issues. So if you're having serious gut issues, probiotics aren't always my first line of defense. Just so people think of that. Some people, they do great on it. Other people, they don't react well. So you kind of just have to trial and error sometimes. You have to kind of see what your system likes. And that's really true with a lot of things when it comes to the gut. You start finding out different people respond differently to different foods. And what you expect everyone would do great on, some people just can't handle. So you kind of do have to listen to your body and just realize, okay, are you taking probiotics, or is it really helping? Is it making the situation worse? If it's making the situation worse, that means you might need to do a little bit more repair on the gut before adding in the probiotics. But there's at least 2 different ones with Azure Standard, AzureWell brand. You have the next step, advanced probiotics. That's 18 different strains. And then you have the multiculture pre-post prebiotics. So that one is really a powerhouse, because you're giving the body what it needs to not only have probiotics, but to help the body make probiotics that are healthy. And so you're getting the pre and post. Anything you want to add there, HR?
Yeah, I think it's a wise statement that you made there. So many times I see individuals wanting, they're looking for the quadrillion billion amounts of probiotics to put in the gut, and the gut just isn't quite ready for that.
Yeah.
And it's, the gut is, again, it's your first line of defense to a lot of the stressors that the body is taking in. And the cards are stacked against you, boy, man. You potentially have an overgrowth of bacteria. You got heavy metals. You got all of these stressors that you're up against. You have a whole microbial imbalance, and so where do you start? I mean, what's oftentimes compromised is just some of the essential nutrients that's so important to allow the probiotics to thrive. You don't need a whole lot. And even in our next step, advanced probiotic, you're not going to see these billions amounts of there's billions there, but trillions or billions amounts of the different probiotics. It's the diversity that is so important here. The diversity that we offer to the gut. But going back to what you said, I think it's so wise. The short chain fatty acids, the SCFAs, right, are so important to helping promote that probiotic activity, your own probiotic activity. And there's these concepts of prebiotics. In the slide previous, there was the greens product. What a beautiful prebiotic that is for the gut. And so getting these minerals, getting enough water into the diet, making sure that we have adequate essential fatty acids into the diet. Now you're going to start to prepare the gut lining and the villi for this perfect probiotic media to allow it to thrive. And so I wouldn't be necessarily completely afraid of it. We have the multicultural pre-post prebiotic here, which is just, it's a gentle giant in how it supports the body, but probiotics, the microbiome, I think it's just so important to understand that, yes, we have prebiotics that are critical to feed the probiotic activity. You then have the probiotic activity, and that microbiome, that probiotic activity is so critical in metabolizing and taking those nutrients, those 90 essential nutrients, and putting them into their end chain postbiotic metabolites. These postbiotic metabolites now go systemically into the body, and they're critical to every one of our systems that we're functioning on. So again, yes, let's make sure that we have some of the key elements in place. We're getting that, we're feeding the probiotics before we actually start taking probiotics.
Yeah, I think one of the key things you said there is the a way for people to think about this is it's more important that we're looking at the types of bacteria and how they work together versus looking for a product that just has trillions and trillions and trillions of probiotics. The amount isn't as important as the types. And so a lot of times people, they make the mistake of they're looking for a probiotic that has the most amount of everything. And it's like, I often find that people don't handle that well. So more is not always better.
More is not always better. No, sir.
All right. Fiber. Okay, so you need bulk, you need fiber. Every 1 gram of fiber you eat, you potentially increase your stool volume by up to 5 grams. That's significant. And it also is going to help your peristalsis. That is, it says it right there. That is the contraction-like movement of the colon to move the feces out. So fiber is another one of those ones that some people do really great on certain types of fiber and some people don't. And you kind of find what type of fibers you want. But you usually need all of them. When your gut's healthy, you should be able to handle all fibers. And so there's soluble fiber, there's insoluble, right? And we give you some examples of this. So your oats, beans, fruits, it dissolves in water to form a gel. So that would be soluble. Okay. So insoluble means it doesn't actually dissolve in the water. You get this more from like whole wheat, vegetables. It adds bulk to the stool. And that one helps speed up the transition time through the intestines. Okay. It acts as a prebiotic, fueling beneficial gut bacteria. So here's the tip. Increase fiber intake gradually and drink plenty of water to prevent discomfort. So you have to remember when you're putting in fiber, you need to add more water because it's going to kind of swell up and you want it to have all the water and move things out. If you take a bunch of fiber and you drink very little, you might be making bricks. You don't want bricks. So it's just a simple way of thinking about that. But at the same time, when you have diets that don't get a lot of fiber, you don't have a whole lot of stool or consistency there to move things through. So if you're starting, this is another one when you're starting to feel, maybe you're getting a lot of gas or bloating in the lower digestive tract, and it just seems like things aren't moving, you might need the fiber. So add in the fiber. Now, what does Azure Well have for that? Well, there's a number of things, but technically, the one fiber there is the IP6 with inositol. That is actually technically a food fiber. Now, most greens are going to add fiber to the diet, or at least add bulk. That's why we say bulk fiber cleanse. Not everything is necessarily classified as a fiber, but it's something that can add bulk or movement of the stool out of the body. So look what's mentioned again, super greens, mentioned the second time. This was the second time IP6 is mentioned because it gives you minerals and fiber. You have the bentonite detoxification clay. Okay, well, that's definitely not classified as a fiber necessarily, but it would be classified as a binder or a bulking agent that will help bind up all those toxins in the gut and help move things out to make sure your stuff's not sitting in the colon for too long and being reabsorbed. So get that stuff out. Pure chlorella is more of a chelator, and so it helps pull out toxins, but it is from a plant. It's chlorella. And so it will help with fiber too and help cleanse and pull things out of the colon. So that's what you got with Azure so far as supplements for fiber and bulk and movement.
Yeah, I would hone in. We've definitely seen the greens and IP6 come up a couple different times. Everybody knows a lot about that chlorella. But the bentonite detoxification clay. This bentonite clay is just a beautiful, gentle giant here. And oftentimes I like to bring in that very first, what kind of a lot of us clinicians describe as the remove phase, in the 4R approach. But it is just what I want people to understand. A lot of people have a misconception about bentonite clays, and first and foremost, the first thing I want to say is not all bentonite clays are created equal. Okay? This is a freshwater-based bentonite clay from a volcanic deposit, and it has been clinically shown to be hydrophobic, lipophobic. So hydro, water, lipo, fat, phobic, repel. It repels water-soluble and fat-soluble vitamins and minerals. So what does it do? This just lies in suspension in the gut and covers over 7,000 square meters per gram. That's from mouth to anus, from tooth to tail, as they say, right? And so it lies there in suspension in the colon. So it doesn't bind to any foods. It doesn't, balloon up like some different fibers, like psyllium. Psyllium is kind of known to just suck the body dry if you don't have enough water. It doesn't need all of that. In fact, you don't need a whole lot of water with this particular one. But I like taking this, and there's a couple different applications that in which you can take it. But it is that binder that Dr. Monzo is talking about. Beautiful binder, and the science behind it has an FDA master file of over 20 plus years of research studying it. And it actually showing its ability to bind to dicarbonyl groups of chemotherapy metabolites. Those metabolites that kind of make you nauseous and sick. And so it has the ability to bind to dicarbonyl groups. And these are the same types of groups that you often find in aflatoxins, molds, mycotoxins in addition. So very, very powerful. Again, when you're up against everything, the cards are stacked against you here in the colon, you got to be careful in what you bring into the colon, because the colon when it's been chronically ill, it potentially becomes highly reactive. You go into a what's called sympathetic state, very reactive state. And when you've been chronically ill, your fists are up and it's swinging at anything and everything that you give it, and because it's just in protective mode. So you try to take a capsule here, and your body reacts to it. You try to take a capsule there, your body doesn't do so swell with it. You take this, you put it into water, and you drink it down the hatch. And you don't even know that you've taken it. You can even sprinkle it on your food if you want. It's a wonderful food application as well. They went to Africa, a couple different studies, and you kind of look into Tim Phillips and Robert Carpenter, and they went to Africa and went to a village where they were harvesting mounds of corn and just putting it in the village, and they found all these aflatoxins, all these mold spores all over this corn, because it's been sitting there for days, weeks, and they sprinkled the bentonite clay all over it to preserve it. So these mold spores wouldn't form. Phenomenal. And so it's a beautiful player. A lot of different ways in which you can apply it. But back to when the gut is highly reactive and you're highly sympathetic and the vagus nerve is just not cooperating with the body. This is a bentonite clay, remember. And so it's a beautiful grounding agent to the gut. Take a mud. So when you have these positive cations everywhere that are causing inflammation and this neurological response, it calms it down, calms down the body, calms down the vagus, calms down that parasympathetic sympathetic response. Boy, I love this product. Love this product. All right, let's move on.
Yeah, well, this just confirms again, when you're using whole food products, real products from nature, there's a certain intelligence that comes along with these things, because there's a lot of synthetic binders and chelation agents out there. And the problems with those are they just bind to everything. They just pull everything out. And what we find a lot of times in nature, if we just use what nature provides, a lot of times there's like a wisdom there that it works along with the body, and it doesn't just pull out everything. It's very specific.
So, yeah, God, God's apothecary here is a phenomenal thing in how it's perfectly written up in prescription and how to in the foods in which he created to support the body's natural health and balance and restoration. So it is a key principle that Azure Well formulates all of its products on. It's based upon the principles of naturopathic medicine called eclectic formulation, in where we're not just looking to utilize nutrition in an allopathic manner and just muscle results in that the body's not ready for. We're looking to work with full spectrum whole food ingredients to sometimes just gently nudge the body and remind it of what it's supposed to do.
That's right. And that's why we do this. All right, next topic is enzymes. So this is number 6. Obviously, enzymes is a very important one. This is the one, maybe just because I've done it a lot. When I was sick, I had, ulcerative colitis is what got me into the field of natural health.
I forgot, Dr. Monzo, this is your specialty. This is your vertical here. This is where it all began with you.
Yeah, so the enzymes are one of my favorite things to start with people, because guess what? They decline as you age. Everyone kind of knows a lot of things do. Enzymes definitely do. But here's the thing that probably has changed the most, and that is how we eat foods. Okay. Overprocessed and overheated foods really destroy the enzymes that are originally in them. So even with a plant-based diet, if people had a plant-based diet, if you're cooking all that food, you're really killing all the enzymes. So, and how many people can eat everything raw? Not a whole lot of people. So we have this problem where most people these days are not getting enough enzymes because they don't eat the types of foods that would actually have the naturally occurring enzymes. So, of course, what do the enzymes do? If you don't know, enzymes break down things. Okay, that's the main, when we're talking about digestive enzymes, at least, we're talking about a process of breaking down different particles in the body. So we typically talk about proteins, fats, carbohydrates. There's a few other categories you could throw in there, but that is the 3 basics. And so you need specific proteins that break down, or specific enzymes that break down proteins, specific enzymes that break down fats, and then carbohydrates. And so those things can be broken down into their building blocks, and then the body takes all those nutrients that it's broken down and removed from the actual food and use it. And of course, then you have something like hydrochloric acid in the stomach. And as HR said, that's not technically an enzyme, but it's the acid of the stomach that breaks down everything. And that is one of the most important steps of digestion, because the hydrochloric acid is what does the majority of breaking down your food. It starts in the stomach. And they even say that, if your finger was to get chopped off and go down into the stomach, your stomach acid would completely digest the finger if it was healthy. The problem with most people is stomach acid is not healthy and the pH isn't right. And then you get into all these other digestive health problems.
You actually need
all kinds of things don't work right.
you actually need an alkaline pH to produce an acidic stomach. Is that correct, Dr. Monzo?
Yes, you do. So you want your stomach very acidic. So the whole idea of drinking things that alkalize you, especially when you're eating, is a really bad idea. You don't want that. Yeah, maybe you can get away with it outside of when you eat, but especially when you're eating, you do not want to alkalize the stomach. You want the stomach acidic.
So you don't want Tums, for instance?
No.
Oh, okay.
See, a lot of people get misconceptions because when your stomach acid is not strong enough and the pH isn't acid enough, the valves get weak. And then what happens is you either get undigested food because there's not enough acid to break it down, or the valves weak and doesn't completely stay closed. So then you have the stuff regurgitating and coming up. And the mistake is people assume that means you have too much stomach acid, when the reality is your stomach acid probably isn't strong enough and the pH isn't strong enough. And so the valve's weak, and it's the food in there that's petrifying now because it's sitting in there too long that's coming back up. So it's not true 100% of the time, but I would say 90% of the time, stomach acid issues are usually because you don't have enough. And all you have to do is try taking a little bit of hydrochloric acid, or you start with apple cider vinegar, maybe some digestive enzymes, and see if it makes the problem better. If that makes the problem better, you know you don't have enough stomach acid. So you need all these enzymes to break things down. And for me, it's one of my favorite places to start because almost everyone needs more enzymes. And guess what? They're one of those things that are very gentle on the body. If you take too many enzymes, it's not going to do anything to you. Your body will find something to do with those enzymes. So it's very hard to really overdo it in enzymes. Not so much hydrochloric acid. We're talking about food enzymes. You could overdo hydrochloric acid, but food enzymes, you really can't overdo those. So a lot of times when people have gas and bloating, that's the first thing I do is I have them pump a lot of enzymes in there, not hydrochloric acid, enzymes, and see if that helps break stuff down in the gut. And maybe that's why they're forming so much gas and bloating, is because they're really not breaking things down. I know there's some excellent chiropractors out there who, when they do their x-rays on people, they can actually see the fecal matter in your digestive tract all backed up because the enzyme activity is so low, they're not breaking anything down. And then you get all bloated and gassy and you're not going to the bathroom. So enzymes are a great way to start breaking that down. So water, enzymes, minerals, that's usually where I start. And then from there, we start looking at, okay, what else needs to be added? Azure Well has a bunch of enzyme supplements here. So let's break these down. In the middle, digestive aid, biotin, HCl, that's hydrochloric acid. So if you don't have enough stomach acid, that's the one for you.
And I would just say, with the biotin HCl, it's the tricky one for sure.
Yeah, that's necessarily where you want to start.
Yeah, it's pretty much the one that everybody. I would say that if there is one supplement that everybody should have, it's this one, but you can't always start there. And it's the first line of defense for your immune system. It's the hydrochloric acid that keeps your teeth clean, right? And everybody's like, wait, what? Keeps your teeth clean? Yeah. When you have a buildup of plaque and it's cavitational lesions, oftentimes that caries comes from the intestinal tract, and it's because you're low in HCl. So I said everybody needs it, but not everybody can take it. So one thing to do is maybe just start with one capsule. See how you do. And one of three things are going to happen. Number one, nothing. Nothing's going to happen. You can take it and you were just fine. Number two, you kind of feel it. You kind of feel it in the back of your throat. It kind of comes up a little bit. And as Dr. Monzo said, it's not because you have too much hydrochloric acid. You just have too much of the wrong acid. The food is sitting there rotting and fermenting because your body's not breaking it down. So you have this lactic acid production. So we gotta maybe drink some more water, take some licorice. There's some different things that you can do, not candy licorice, but the herb. And there's some things that you do to help calm that down, get those parietal cells nice and cleaned up again. Or you take it. That's the third thing is here. You take it, and you feel that burning sensation. Or you take a couple and you feel the burning. What's going on there? Well, you potentially have a hyperproliferation of the helicobacterium called H. pylori, also known as H. pylori, which is a natural commensal of the intestinal tract and even of the gut. But when you have low enzymes and low HCl, you have too much of this, and it causes these ulcerative lesions, right? And so we got to be careful with it and how we proceed forward with it. But it is such a critical player as the first line of defense, as the first step. Well, it's not the first step in digestion, but one of the first steps in digestion.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I'd like to not start with that one a lot of times because we always don't want the body always becoming dependent upon it. If you give too much of it for extended years, I know some people that started taking it and they take it for years and years and years. Your body can get used to not making it, and then you have a process. So that's why a lot of times I like starting with the second one next to it on the right, which is the pepsin HCl catalyst. So this is more stimulating your body to help make more stomach acid itself. So a lot of times I like starting with that one first and seeing if that's enough catalyst to get things going. And if it isn't, then okay, we really need to get that hydrochloric acid in there. But if we can get your body doing it itself with the minerals and with the pepsin HCl catalyst, then that's where I like to start with the stomach. Most people do really good with every meal digestive enzymes. That's just your basic enzymes to break down your proteins and fats and carbohydrates. Then you have the proteolytic enzymes. Now, this is dual purpose proteolytic enzymes. So it can function as a proteolytic or as a food enzyme. And proteolytic enzymes are kind of enzymes that go and help clean up the body. They help break down things that aren't supposed to be in the body and clean it up. Usually you take that away from food if you want it to be used as a proteolytic. And if you take it with food, then it's actually used as a food enzyme to help break down your food. It really helps the heart to break down fibers and casein and gluten, which usually if people have problems with dairy or wheat, it's the casein and gluten. At least that's what we think. I have different ideas. I think it has more to do with the fact that we've destroyed our food, and the pesticides and all the stuff that's being sprayed is really what's causing people to react to the gluten. And that's a whole nother story. And the same thing with milk. You know, when we look at what happens to our milk, that we used to not do that kind of stuff to milk. It used to be from the cow to us. And so I think a lot of what we've done to the food is what creates this environment where the food really isn't healthy. And then the body starts overreacting, and, you know, it gets triggered by these things. And their natural states, they probably wouldn't have been a problem. But and needless to say, if you're having a problem breaking down the casein and gluten and the fibers, here's a product you might want to try. Now, stomach soothing support, that's completely different. That's not necessarily enzyme. There might be a couple enzymes in there. I think maybe bromeline's in there or something. It's come from pineapple. But this has these nice herbals like ginger and fennel. There's a few others, a few enzymes. And that kind of helps smooth out the gut and the stomach and the intestines. It's a very nice cooling, anti-inflammatory cooling down process on the gut if it's inflamed. So there you go for enzymes. We're on the last topic, herbs. Okay. Well, things interesting about the herbs are they're not essential nutrients. It's not something you have to do, but they're very powerful. And of course, herbs are plants, so they do contain a lot of your nutrients, but usually used medicinally through help all kinds of problems. So there's herbs that help the liver gallbladder and for detox support. There's herbs that help the immune system, the mucous membrane. So you have to think about that. The entire digestive tract has a mucous membrane lining in it. And that's the lining that usually gets inflamed and has problems. And there are very powerful mucolytic herbals that help. Marshmallow root is probably one of the most well known for the digestive tract. Even turmeric, though, helps with the inflammation. And then you have herbals for critters. And what I did here is I listed a number of herbals that you can find in Azure Well products. These are very common herbs that are used in a lot of the different products. And so it's really depending on what are you trying to accomplish with the herbal formula. And some of that might be you seeking a little bit more professional help to find out what your real problem is. But if you think you know what it is, then you can go to some of these amazing products that Azure Well has. Look at that lineup. Well, guess what one garlic has? Well, Garlic Immune is garlic. And there's a bunch of other powerhouses in there. You have the liver support extended. There's a liquid form. There's the gallbladder liver we already mentioned earlier, which was the bile support. And then there was the bile gallbladder action support. All of those are very similar, and they have herbs that are going to help the liver and gallbladder function better. And so they're going to help those type of things. You have the, we mentioned earlier, and just the last one, that stomach soothing support. So that had herbs that helped with soothing the stomach, like the ginger and the fennel. Now you have two on here, the very first two, the Para Punch and the Katava. No, I always say that. It always comes out wrong. Katava Gut Advantage. These two are more, they're kind of like a 1-2 punch when you use them together. That helps a lot of the critters. Obviously, the Para Punch is going to be the one that's a little bit more powerful and robust for the critters and the microbiome. That has the wild beer, garlic, and a number of other things. And the Gut Advantage is a little bit more related to gut mobility and the gut microbiome. But when you kind of pair them together, they're a real powerhouse for the critter stuff. Now, we threw on one other supplement here that you wouldn't think of for digestion, and that's the Cran Better Bladder Support. You think of that one for the bladder, but the reason why it's on there is because of the blend. So when you start to learn your herbology, you kind of start seeing formulas and you realize, we have to give it a name. And we had a specific purpose for this product. But when you look at the herbs in it, it can really serve multiple purposes. A lot of herbal products are that way. We give it one name, but how many things does garlic help in the body? Well, hundreds, probably. So we say it's for the immune, but how many other things is it really doing for you? Well, tons. So when you look at the Cran Better, what is in there? You have the marshmallow root. You have hydrangea. You have alfalfa. You have olive leaf, parsley, chlorella. That's not just going to help the bladder. That's going to help the digestive tract too. And it has that mucolytic herb in there that's going to help calm things down. So sometimes it's just learning how to read these things to get some new ideas. Oh, this product might help other things in the body. All right, well, that's about it for this. The only thing left I threw at the end was a couple hands-on suggestions. And these are not to address diseases. We're not making disease claims here. This is talking about the systems of the body. Okay, and this pathway is called mouth consumption, messenger pathway. It helps the energy circulation through the stomach, the mouth, the nose, the lips, the tonsils, the teeth, the gums. So you can see what the pathway looks like there. It's very large. It's going to have a lot to do with that stomach digestion. So very simple application here. Right hand's touching the left 21. You can see that in the illustration is right next to the nose. Imagine that. And then your left hand is touching the right 14, which is at the bottom of the rib cage. You do that for 5 minutes, and then your left hand only moves to the middle right toe. Your right hand would stay. And you do that for 5 minutes. And that's going to help that whole energetic process of stomach support. All right. Another one is the large intestine. So this one's called the arm and bowel messenger pathway. It helps almost anything you can think of with the arm, but you can see it comes down into the gut. It also comes up into the teeth. So it's going to help the large intestine, the skin, fascia, the arm, the shoulder, the teeth, the gums, elimination. So it's really going to be powerful for that large intestine health. Left hand goes to the right 11. So that if you find your T1 on the back of the neck, that's the largest bone, you're right next to it on the right side with the left hand. Your right hand is going to the index finger of the left hand. That's one way to do it. So you're kind of doing like this thing where you're holding your finger. The other way you could do that, for everyone listening, is when your left hand goes to the 11, you could take your, let's see, would you want to do it that way or do you want to do it the other way? Doesn't matter. Depends on what side you're working on. So I would probably do my right hand to the left. Yeah, my right hand to the left 11. And then with your left hand, you can simply touch your thumb and index finger together. That's like you touching your index finger without touching it. And the two pads would go together, and then you would do the pad of the thumb over the nail. And that works both sides of the index finger. So that would be like holding that index finger, because doing this thing is kind of sometimes hard. So just loop, I call it looping, just loop those fingers. 5 minutes. And then the, let's see, which one would it be? The hand that's on the 11 back here would come down to below your rib cage. And you'd hold that for 5 minutes. And that helps that energy pathway travel. So it'll come up, across, down into the gut. Hope that was easy to. And then here is for the small intestine. And so this is called sound assimilation. It goes, as you can see in the picture, it goes through the small intestine there. It kind of comes down in the arm. It goes all the way up through the throat, up into the face and into the ear. So it has a lot to do with the small intestine, cardio, nerves, little finger, the face, the ears, brain, gut. So this is a brain, gut, heart connection, because I don't know if you can see it there, but it travels slightly through the heart and the gut and into the brain. Very easy to do. Left hand goes to the left 11, again, right next to T1. And at the same time, the right hand's going to the right 13, which is right here on the chest. You're holding those 2 points, and you can hold it for about 5 minutes or longer. You really can't overdo it when you're working on yourself. You can hold the points as long as you want. And that is going to help the small intestine function a little bit better. So that does it with the presentation today. So.
Dr. Monzo, thank you so much again. Just an inspiration of information to really allow ourselves to get back on track in a very simple way, but elegant, right? This temple that we have been served with is, as we mentioned before earlier on, it's not this crazy puzzle that we think it is. It's you listen and you follow his word. I think it will guide us into some very basic principles that will that make sense. It's not hard, and we follow this, and we'll find ourselves much more capable of restoring that balance, to getting us back on track with our health. So, Dr. Monzo, again, you're able to translate this in such an easy way, and we so much appreciate you helping us understand these systems that have been given to us. For everybody else, thank you for joining us again. Until next time, next month, stay well with radiant health. Bye for now.